still getting over the fact that Sharon and I are not meeting wearing bathing suits by the lake, which is our more customary mode, but it's great to be in a different circle. So I got two pieces tonight. One is relevant to the theme of women's equality. A few years ago, a friend gave me a volume of poems translated from a Japanese poet named Takamura Kotaro. And it's called Love Poems for Chico. Naganuma Chico is his wife. They met in, around 1911 at the end of the Meiji period and what was called the Taisho era, when there was this blossoming of democracy and the arts and gender equality. A lot of people think of Japan as this warlike 20th century nation that turned into a manufacturing giant, but actually prior to 1930, there was a lot of democratic arts and gender equality. So the sad part of this is that Chico became mentally ill as the Japanese military was taking over the country, and she died of tuberculosis in an asylum. And so Kotaro wrote these poems. So what I've done is, I won't try to screen share, but I've alternated stanzas. First one being mine, second one being a centoed extraction of Kotaro's lines. So you'll just have to follow along. So it's called Love Poem for Chico with Cento. Kotaro fell into a well with Chico between the Meiji and Taisho eras, when Japan's arts bloomed, watered with sexual and political freedom. My innate disposition to separate from the group made me ignorant of the world's discord. He had been to Europe. He broke the 17 haiku vows, inseminated his country with free verse, among other sacrileges. The cowardly look at us first with voices of wonder, then sing all abuse. They watered a simple life, happy without owning anyone else's art, painting a 20-year scroll of love as the military engines fueled up. I believe in our life with the ease I trust in nature. The two of us ride far above. She started to hear voices the year Japanese soldiers murdered innocents in Nanjing, while imagining glorious prophecies for the American Navy. Looking back for the first time from the brink of sanity, the roar of the world's raging waves cannot touch this moment. She died of tuberculosis in a mental hospital 3 years before Pearl Harbor, Kotaro never closing his heart to her as the flickers of recognition faded. But at the brink of this life, you became the Chico of old. All of life's love leaned into an instant. In the dead of the October night when Chico died, Kotaro stood lost before the still single body as others dressed her, lit candles and incense. I clean and purify the empty studio, sweep the dust from a small corner. I stand alone in the dark studio while some say an exquisite moon is just outside. Near the end of the war, the Shoan temple in Hanamaki, where Kotaro had held a memorial service for Chico, was firebombed. Rain blew through the paper doors, dampening the priest's robe. I recalled the procession of your life, for me, consumed in flames. After Chico died, Kotaro met her as an elemental being, a part of him, alive in the plum wine she made only for him to drink on cold spring nights. Chico has returned to the elements, burns phosphorescent in my cells, is my soul's extremity, exists in my flesh, smiling at me. So that's that piece. The other piece I have, I wrote just this week. I was reading some of Robert Bly's translations. He's one of the best translators I know, and he's translated Lorca, and I believe Sharon made a mention of Lorca in one of her pieces, so I'll take that as a harbinger. And I was just reminded of how when Lorca came to New York in the late 1920s, he wrote some of the most devastating poems about American capitalism that were ever written. And both of my grandfathers lived through the crash of 1929. And one of them was born again and the other attempted suicide. And so I just found myself imagining what would have happened if Lorca had met my grandfathers. So this is called I Wish My Grandfathers Had Met Lorca. Victor, an original madman who admitted later, after giving it all to God, that he spent his career trying to get people to buy things they didn't need and couldn't afford. Maybe in a speakeasy on 52nd, Lorca would have bought him a drink and gotten him drunk on the night air of Granada. Maybe the brutality of the Depression would have softened. Maybe Victor would have moved the family to Spain. My mother would have married a Spanish guitarist, and I'd be writing this, watching the sun set over Granada from my hillside veranda. Ned, who decided to become a stockbroker in 1928, found by my 12-year-old father with his head in the oven in 1929. Maybe Lorca could have taken the New Haven Railroad up to visit him in the sanitarium where he was whisked away that night. Maybe the scent of jasmine or the call of a nightingale might have come into that bare room where the poet, speaking almost no English, could have gotten through his layered capitalist despair so that Ned made it as a novelist. My father did not have to work, but sailed the Sound with his cousin Seymour, selling the boats they made by hand for the sheer joy of it. That's what I got.